This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you? If people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else. Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
There's never been a faster or easier way to start your weight loss journey than with PlushCare. PlushCare accepts most insurance plans and gives you online access to board-certified physicians who can prescribe FDA-approved weight loss medications like Wegovy and Zepbound for those who qualify. Take charge of your health and speak with a board-certified physician about a weight loss plan that's right for you. Get started today at plushcare.com/weight loss. That's plushcare.com/weight loss. plushcare.com/weight loss.
Hello and welcome, and thanks for joining me for this episode of Stray Thoughts. I'm Damian Robb, writer, podcaster and educator, and on this podcast I try to cobble together some stray thoughts into messy but meaningful essays. It's a kind of audio blog, so much so that you can also read the episodes and see any associated images by going to damianrobb.com/stray thoughts. So let's do it. Let's share some stray thoughts. And for this one, I want to talk about holidays, homes, and temporary realities. In the last week, I've had 3 homes. The first home I shared with my wife, the second my brother, and the third is just me. Let's start where we left off last time, in Kufstein. Holly left on a Monday. She did so at roughly 5 a.m, leaving with a hug and a kiss and a bag on either side of her. I would be doing the same 24 hours later. Holly was heading to Rome. From Kufstein, located in the Austrian countryside, this is an all-day affair. She trained it back to Vienna, where she got a flight to Rome, with the public transport there finally seeing her into a new temporary home 13 hours after she'd left the last one. My own move would be far simpler. I was heading to Innsbruck, only a 35-minute trip by train from Kufstein. I packed and tidied up the apartment, put my big bag on my back and my small one on my front, and walked out, closing the door behind me, likely to never see that temporary home again. I walked to the station and waited. The train pulled in, I hopped on, and was soon rushing toward my next home. Back in 2018, before marriage and COVID and being a full-time broke-ass freelance writer, I visited Innsbruck. The weather then was overcast, the clouds seemingly having moved in with no intention to leave. Despite this, I was enamoured. Having now visited again with a bit more time to explore its various nooks and crannies, I can comfortably say of all the cities I've visited, it is one of my favourites. It is a near-perfect mix of city and country. The Old Town Centre and Central Boulevard are both gorgeous to look at and stroll through, and the size of the city itself is easily manageable on foot, with your best bet to walk along the river to soak in some quality views. It also has colour and life, good food and drink, including the sometimes hard to find in Austria, craft beer, and is, perhaps thanks to being both a tourist town and a university town, a good mix of young and old, local and tourist. It is also ringed by mountains. Walk down any street or weave through any laneway full of beautiful architecture and colourful facades, which immediately make me feel like I've managed to step into a cosy fantasy book in the best example of escapism becoming reality, and look up. There you'll see a mountain, green and blue and brown, that will make your jaw drop and the edges of your mouth rise. I never get sick of it, truly. Part of me keeps expecting to, but no. The good thing about being a mountain pervert is that it continues to titillate. Even better, these mountains are easy to access from the town centre, with one funicular literally being located in the heart of the city, ready to take you up and into the clouds. 3 other chairlifts are only a short bus ride away, all attached to a different mountain, all containing views that stun me and which I could never find back in Oz. First though, I had to get to my second home. This was a 2-kilometre walk from the station, located a pleasing distance from the real hustle and bustle, but still with plenty of places to eat and shop nearby. 2 kilometres is an easy distance to walk. I do it every day without thinking. But with a big bag on my front and a small one on my back, it is suddenly a challenge, mostly for my shoulders, a part of my body I usually never consider when walking. It didn't matter. I was strolling through Innsbruck, a phrase I used a lot during this week, usually sung to the tune of Walking in Memphis. The city was as colourful as I remembered, its skies just as grey as last time. I stopped for a coffee, happy to take both bags from my shoulders, and got some writing done while I waited until midday where I could check into my new home. Midday came, and I put my bags back on and went and met George, my Airbnb host, outside of the accommodation. The building I was staying in was older than most that exist in all of Australia. One thing I never get used to, and I'm not sure Europeans could ever understand having lived with it their whole lives, is just how present their history is. It lives in their buildings and statues and cobblestones. It exists in the town layouts, the scattered castles and fortifications that are now novel and decorative rather than functional. Of course, my country does have history, one equally as long, if not longer, but it's not one we sadly live with on a day-to-day basis. Anyway, I was meeting George, a trim and bespectacled middle-aged man who had a bubble of energy about him, and who was shocked at seeing just one of me until I explained that my brother would be joining me from Vienna the next day. He opened the tall front doors and led me into a wide space, clearly once stables, then through them towards another entrance, up a stairway that wore its lime green chipped and dated colour scheme with elegance, and to the door of home number 2. He gave me a tour, explaining as he did so the apartment's histories and particularities. The apartment was huge, and George's shock at seeing a solo traveller suddenly made a bit more sense. That's thing number 1 you need to know about this place, just how big it was. The rooms all had high ceilings and so much space that even with their big, lush furnishings, you still couldn't help but be aware of all the floor you could see. Thing number 2 you need to know is that the floor was wood. The original wood, in fact, which is why it let out a chorus of squeaks with every step. The bedrooms, of which there were 2, were also ginormous, each one bigger than my living room back home. George explained that presently he and his boss, who was actually the one who owned the apartment, were limited in what they could do with it, as it was heritage listed, which meant anything they did would ultimately cost a fortune to keep the facade intact. He told me they'd replaced the windows for an eye-watering amount of money, and had clearly done some, to my mind, incredible work on the interior design. Their future goal was to split it up and make it student accommodation. But for now, their loss was our huge and spacious gain. George led me through the long dining room that I felt sure, correctly, Jono and I wouldn't use, and into the kitchen, where he gave me the keys and told me the Wi-Fi password. Throughout this final bit of the tour, my eyes kept getting drawn to a room he hadn't pointed out, one made of wood and glass located off the side of the kitchen. However, since George didn't mention it, neither did I. He did show me one other room, however, as large as all the rest but completely unrenovated, meaning it looked like a great room to get murdered in. They used it for storage. George left, and the balloon of excitement that had been growing inside of me swelled even further. The first thing I did was to have a look at the wood and glass room. It had not one door but 2, each abutted against each other, which made me sure I wouldn't be able to get in. But door number 1 opened, and then door 2, and I entered a warm and calming sunroom that looked out onto mountains, and my balloon of excitement burst. This home was decadent and luxurious, and thing number 3 you should know, absolutely littered with primo riding spots. A collection of photos of which I have added to the written version of this, which you can find at damianrobb.com/stray thoughts. I buzzed, wanting to do all the things at once but too amped up to do any of them. I danced across the squeaky floor filled with delight and the need to share this with others. I sent Jono a message telling him we had done well, filmed a quick tour of the place and sent it off to Holly, and then went about sitting in every chair and opening every cupboard, all while taking a bevy of photos in an attempt to capture just how beautiful I found the place. I had already fallen in love with home number 2. I keep saying home because for this brief moment in time, that is the function these buildings serve, and it's always kind of shocking just how easily this happens. We enter a space unfamiliar to us other than a scattering of photos seen on the internet, explore it, study it, then make it our own. One of the great pleasures for me whenever I travel is figuring out what all my new little routines will be, deciding where I'll set up my phone and laptop, how I'll unpack my toiletry bag, and where my luggage will live. It really takes almost no time at all, and yet is strangely novel and fun. Within an hour of George leaving, once my balloon had burst and my giddiness had run its course, I had laid out all my bits and pieces, set myself up, adapted to the house, and had the house adapt to me. Having turned the place into a home, I had a bath. The next day, Jono arrived. I met him at the station in the afternoon, and within moments we were giggling, both high on the situation and each other's company. Despite Jono having lived overseas for a decade now, we've never travelled just the two of us, both having long-term partners whose company, it should be noted, we very much enjoy. Saying that, it felt like a rare treat to have so much condensed bro time together, and was made better by being in such a beautiful location. I felt like a teenager again, and could feel the awe and wonder of seeing through that teenager's perspectives at the two men he and his brother would become. Amazed to be here, in this place, doing these things. It is a very long way from where we grew up, not just geographically, but metaphysically. I like to think we are both more than we ever dreamed we could be. I showed him the grand open spaces, the squeaky floor, the sunroom. We went out for burgers and beer. If it had already been a home before, it was even more of one now. The next day, we fell down a mountain. We didn't mean to exactly, but then I suppose most people don't mean to fall down a mountain. It started by first riding a funicular up it. The day was still grey, the mountains wreathed in clouds. We pierced those clouds rapidly, riding not just one funicular, but 3 to get to the very top. From there, we could see nothing. We had come too high, too fast, and beaten the heat of the day before it could catch up. We wandered and walked, soon out of breath from the thin air, as we went on foot up the short distance to the very peak. As though rewarding us for doing so, the clouds parted. Innsbruck and its surrounds, the long valley it lived in, the other tips of the Alps, all revealed themselves. We snapped off a bunch of photos, and having slated that thirst, went looking for a walk. The first that we considered had been partially snowed over. We decided to try it anyway, but after one step on that sheer shifting trail, the snow immediately sliding and falling away beneath my foot down the side of the mountain, a fate we could all too easily join, decided against it. We were simply too high, and all the trails were covered with snow and steep to the point of being genuinely dangerous. We went back down the first part of the funicular, and after looking at some trails, decided to walk down the middle section of the mountain path. Here is where we fell down the mountain. The trail we were on, while not snow-covered, was still sheer to the point that after 30 minutes my legs were already turning to jelly from having to hold myself from falling down. That was at least until we got to a section of track that was newly gravelled. There was zero chance of staying upright on that shifting stone, and so instead we embraced the inevitable, went down into a half-sitting, half-crouched position, and commenced a controlled fall down the mountain. Mostly controlled. There were a few times when I was sliding with such speed that it was genuinely difficult to stop. Otherwise, it was pretty damn fun. By the time we made it down the mountain, we needed a drink. Luckily for us, we had a short list of places to do just that. This was because we were about to do a two-man riders pub crawl. I have been lucky enough to host a number of riders pub crawls through some of Melbourne's finest with some of Melbourne's finest, but this was the first international one. It was also the first with only 2 participants, by choice it should be noted. We headed for the first of our 3 establishments, a dimly lit bar with soft seating and which had that most important of ingredients, Wi-Fi. We ordered some drinks, got out our laptops, and got to work. An hour later, the drinks were done, the words had been written, and we were heading out the door for location number 2. This would, due to poor sleuthing on my behalf, prove to be closed. So instead, we chose to wander until a place presented itself to us. We may have only been one drink in, but we had already fallen down a mountain that morning, and so were drunk enough on life that this logic felt sound. Sure enough, we found such a place, the Moustache Bar. We chose a seat under a regal-looking Tom Selleck, got some very local tasty beers, and went back to work. Work here proved to be a mix of writing and talking. I found this is usually the case for a writer's pub crawl. Stop 1, the fingers are flying. The company and situation and drink is making words come out and you do your best to catch them on the page. At stop 2, things have shifted a bit. You're excited by what you've written and the potential of what's to come and, let's be honest, a bit of alcohol, and so the chat begins, usually about each other's stories. Such was the case with Jono and I, with each of us sharing what we had worked on with the other to give a bit of advice. Then stop number 3 comes round and the laptops are all but abandoned. The drinks have kicked in, the chat has taken over, and we're all getting a bit silly. It's a good and natural progression. For us, this happened at a long and twisting grimy Irish pub that was full of dirty charm and soft lighting. We got some Guinness and settled into the silly. The next day saw us up another mountain. Once again, the clouds held domain up there, blocking our view of the surrounding mountains and valleys, but providing a moody, haunted and beautiful aesthetic in their place. We were the first up the mountain that day, which we knew because the chairlift operator had told us so. There is something strangely wonderful about knowing you're the only two fools pottering around on top of a misty mountain. We took a bunch of pics and followed a path until it took us to a small mountain hut. It was wooden and warm and adorable, and we were soon warming our bellies with some very good coffee. Then the rain came, which only made the experience better. Here we were, two brothers enjoying a coffee and the rain in a hut on top of a misty mountain in Austria. Once again, we felt like we had somehow stumbled into the fantasy books we have always enjoyed. We left before the rain did, and so, with jackets on, went for a walk around the mountain. That was Saturday. On Sunday, it was time to pack up the home we had shared and move me to home number 3. Jonathan was heading back to his actual home, the one with his wife and son, whereas I was simply moving to accommodation more appropriate for a solo traveller on the other side of Innsbruck. It was sad to leave that place. Not only had it become a home, it had temporarily become our reality. Jono and I home sharing it together on the outskirts of Innsbruck. And here's the funny thing with travel, because that was our reality. While we both had our usual lives to return to, it can't be denied that for that time, we really were housemates, and we were living together in Innsbruck. That's one of the great appeals of travelling, the ability to taste test other realities and other homes, to exist in them for just a while, know their feel and fit, all while having the comfort of your normal home and reality to return to. I walked Jono back to the station and waved him off, that home and reality leaving with him. Feeling alone, I went to my third home for the week, a small but comfortable hotel apartment. The sky was blue for the first time since I'd got into Innsbruck. I went to a nearby park and wrote. The loneliness settled slowly, becoming comfortable, along with this new and admittedly still very cool reality. For the next little while, I would be a writer, travelling solo across Europe. But I'll tell you more about that next time. For now, I'll say thank you so much for listening to this episode of Stray Thoughts, and if you'd like, you can find me on socials at damianrobb.writer, or feel free to send me an email at damianrobb.writer@gmail.com. And if you enjoyed this, leave a review, tell your friends, all that good stuff. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you next time and sharing some more Stray Thoughts. And until then, I hope you find happiness in your home, wherever it may be.
Sun, sand, and surf await with Qatar Airways. Explore our top 10 beach destinations and find your perfect getaway. Book your escape at QatarAirways.com.
Kick off summer with Super BOGO savings at Sprouts Farmers Market. Now through June 11th, save big with buy one, get one free and buy one, get one 50% off on a huge variety of your favorite items throughout the store. From better-for-you baked goods and bulk nuts to fresh deli salads and protein powders. There's so much to stock up on. Plus, you can order your favorite BOGO items for pickup or delivery on Sprouts.com or through the app. Visit your local Sprouts Farmers Market or shop online at Sprouts.com today.
Once upon a time, Goldilocks discovered some delicious iced coffee in someone else's home.
This Dunkin' Cold is just right. And this Dunkin' Cold is just right. And this Dunkin' Cold is just right.
She sipped on and on, blissfully unaware that the bear stood watching.
Barry, say something.
Roar! Was that good?
The home with Dunkin' is where you want to be.
The living room is where you make life's most beautiful memories. But your sofa shouldn't be the one remembering them. The new life-resistant, high-performance furniture collection from Ashley is designed to withstand all the spills, slip-ups, and muddy paws that come with the best parts of life. Ashley high-performance sofas and recliners are soft, on-trend, and easy to clean. Shop the high-performance furniture in-store or online at ashley.com. Ashley, for the love of home.